Hello and welcome to We Make Success Happen. Today with amazing human Will King. Hello.
Lovely to be here.
Now, so you're the man behind King of Shaves, King of Shades, and now Code Zero.
Yes, so Will King is me. I shave lives around about 15 billion so far. Launched King of Shaves back in 1993, a couple of years before the internet became a thing. Bought shave.com for £18, so that was a good
That's a bargain.
spend of sub 20 quid.
How much do you reckon it's worth now?
We had offers of about $2 million about 20 years ago.
Really?
But it did mean
Wow.
we didn't have to spend very much at all on SEO, search engine optimization, for many years. So
You must have been tempted though. And just buy something else, do you think?
we've got quite a few domain names,
Yeah,
I have
okay.
to say. There was, back in the day, a domain name Gold Rush, where everybody was buying up .coms. But we then, of course, had the first .com crash in 2000, 2001. But it's an important domain name. .com stands for .commercial, and any major global brand will have a .com, Adidas.com, Nike.com, etc.
So for anyone that doesn't know your background and your story, do you want to sort of touch on how you got to launching King of Shaves then?
For sure. Well, going back a long time now. So I was born in 1965. I'm 54 now. Born in Lowestoft. Parents were teachers. Loved sailing. Would have loved to become a professional yachtsman. And was pretty good at sailing. Not quite good enough to get into the national and then feed into the Olympic level. But was the UK's youngest sailing instructor in the mid-80s at the National Sailing Centre. And try to get a degree in yacht design at Southampton. But unfortunately, on my 18th birthday, found out that I got a C and 2 E's for my A-levels.
What were the C and 2 E's in then?
They were in geography, maths and physics.
What,
So
and that changed your pathway, did it?
it did.
Yeah, okay.
That I needed to have a B and 2 C's to get into Southampton University.
Yeah.
So I spent my 18th birthday crying my eyes out whilst legally drinking my first pint at the Woodvale pub in Gurnard near Cowes. But needed to do something. Obviously, I had a gap year booked in New Zealand, or gap 6 months, and then 6 months teaching sailing. So went into clearing and got onto what I thought was going to become a naval architecture course at Portsmouth Polytechnic, which when I was away in New Zealand turned into a mechanical engineering degree course, which was flipping hard work.
Yeah.
My maths wasn't quite at the level it needs to be to do engineering, but I toughed out the 3 years and got a BN Johns 2-2 in engineering. But my skill level wasn't good enough to become an engineer, and it wasn't really my passion. My passion was sailing.
Yeah.
So needed to obviously get some work, having sort of been on the parents' payroll down at Portsmouth Poly and teaching sailing and living the life.
Yeah.
And mum and dad were both teachers, and they used to read The Guardian and the Times Educational Supplement, and I read The Guardian, and there was a part of it which was about jobs, and there was a job advert in there that basically was for selling advertising space, and it said call this number. And so I did, and got myself an interview, and long story short, started my first job at Haymarket Publications in 1987 as a display salesman, telephone advertising executive on £7,000 a year plus commission.
So had you ever wanted to go into advertising then, or was
No.
it just by kind of fluke and chance, or what kind of popped up at the time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I needed to get a job. Living in London sounded kind of cool. And, you know, at that time, the job ad said it was 12K OTE. And genuinely, I didn't know what OTE meant. So when I rang up graduate appointments, said, hello, Will King calling about a job, 12K OTE, what does it mean?
Yeah.
They said, well, why are you asking that? And I said, well, I'm interested in finding out more. And interestingly, that sort of telephone dialogue led to me being interviewed. And then actually through quite a lot of competition from university graduates, getting a job at Haymarket, and worked on Lancaster Gate for Marketing Magazine, selling ads over the phone, 200 phone calls a day, get to speak to 10 decision makers, close 2 deals. But within 6 months, I closed £100,000 worth of advertising revenue and was headhunted out to join a conference production company.
How the hell do you keep your kind of confidence up doing 200 calls a day, or just kind of that determination to get through those sheer numbers?
Yeah, look, so I've always been kind of a persistent character, and I'm quite passionate about what I do. I do put my all into it. So clearly there's training, so we were well trained. Keep it simple, stupid. There's an acronym DIPIDA, define, identify, prove, acquire, desire, action, which takes you to the closing of a...
What's that one? I haven't heard that one before.
DIPIDA. So define, identify, prove. So you've got to find out what they want.
Yeah, okay.
Then you've got to prove you can deliver it. Then you've got to acquire their desire to do it. And then you've got to get the action, which is a trial close. Yeah. If I do this, will you do that? Yeah, it's a binary yes or no. So you're taking them down a decision tree, ending up with the yes or no. You can't start off with a yes or no. Will you buy advertising from me? No. Yeah. Why not? I don't want to. Well, that's the end of the phone conversation. So it's quite nuanced, and we were well trained there. And I put the calls in. We had a Rolodex, had a telephone with a cord attached to the wall, and some contacts to call. But on the day I left, I closed the then marketing's biggest ever advertising deal with the then about to open QE2 conference centre in Parliament Square, and that was £35,000. And we went out for lunch, and I resigned that afternoon because I'd been headhunted to join a conference production company.
Nice. And then how did you make that sort of transition? Because when you made redundant, that kind of forced you into thinking about King of Shaves.
Yeah, so I had a fantastic time working in this event marketing industry. I had a company car, I bought a flat in Streatham. I was earning £40,000 in 1992. That was a big chunk of change for a 25, 26-year-old guy. And then we had the early 90s recession. And a lot of the listeners won't remember that. Perhaps their parents will, or if they're age like me now, in my mid-50s. But interest rates were 13%. Unemployment was 2.5 million. The UK was only recently recovering from the destruction of manufacturing in the 70s and 80s. And there was a huge recession in the UK. And big companies, like, for example, Braun or Duracell, who spent a lot of money with our company launching new products, £200,000 for a product launch, for example, they decided not to spend that money. So where I had ended up working as a business development guy, and then people were being made redundant, then I ended up as the MD, then I ended up making everybody redundant, and I was the last person to make redundant me.
Oh, nice.
So that... and that wasn't, because I was bad at my job. It was the fact that the... projects had dried up, the company had more company cars and employees in it, and clearly there was no way out. And I was upset about that, and that's why I decided to do a product-based business, which turned into King of Shaves, a shaving product, and be my own boss. So if it all went wrong in the future, I wouldn't be able to lay blame with people who'd hired me and failed to see what was happening in the world. So that was in 92, yeah.
How did it feel having to sort of lay off people and make people redundant?
It was super tough. Okay, I mean, I haven't talked about this a huge amount. It's in a book I wrote 10 odd years ago. But the people I'm making redundant were older than me, so in their late 30s to mid 40s. They had kids at school, they had incomes they're expecting to have, they had mortgages to pay. And I was like a 26-year-old guy, and I'm just saying that we've got no work coming in, so I'm going to have to, Fred, I'm going to have to let you go. And nowadays you have consultancies and different ways of dealing with redundancies, but then it's, sorry, and we're going to have to let you go. Can I have your company car keys, hand back your company credit card? There was statutory redundancy available from the government. So it ended up with basically me and a couple of others, and then me taking a call from the head office, who own the company down in Swindon, saying, we're going to be sending somebody up, they'll explain to you what's going to happen next. And yeah, it was probably one of the toughest parts of my life. I think if I look back at it now, I dealt with it very well, I think. I mean, I certainly went into a dark space 2 or 3 months after all of that and felt very sad. But sad as well, like losing a BMW 325i. So I went back to having a bike. But then I'd had a bike before I started work. So then Mum lent me her Citroën de Chevaux, the sort of like the quirky Citroën car, little red car that I ran around in. And, you know, I didn't have massive debts. I was able to just about keep my head afloat. Had to sell some antiques back that I'd bought to pay some rent. But it was about probably 3 to 6 months of soul searching at that time.
So it sounds like quite a lot of pressure, I guess, for a 26-year-old to have on their shoulders of all this kind of like having to fire people, then having redundancy yourself and having to sort of go through that whole kind of change. And then I suppose just worrying about the future, what you're going to do next, how you're going to bring in money. There must have been a lot going on in your head.
There was. I mean, we live in a different world now where a lot of, let's call it, what's going on internally inside your head or your health or your mental health is it can be externalized and helped with. Back in 92, there wasn't any of that, really. So obviously Mum and Dad were very supportive as much as they were able to be. They'd retired from teaching by this time. They'd taken early retirement, but lived in Lowestoft. I lived in Streatham. I'd been living a completely amazing life that suddenly wasn't so amazing. I'd had to rent my flat, move out of my flat because I couldn't afford the mortgage and needed some rental income to pay the mortgage then, moved into a bedroom, and a lot of soul searching. And for sure, it wasn't easy, and there was almost certainly a time of, you know, shoulders down, bit sad, bottom lip out, what am I going to do? But I knew I'd been good at what I'd done, and it wasn't my fault that it hadn't worked out. And the whole thing around getting into product was Duracell batteries were still being bought and put into TV remotes and used to watch the telly or into whatever. So it was then a question of, okay, if I'm going to do product, what product have I got a competency to look at or do? And weirdly, you know, not many people would know this. And at the time, there was a famous TV program, Baywatch, which was airing with Pamela Anderson. And I'd been a sailing guy, and I saw there was a brand called Body Glove in that, and wetsuits. And I thought, oh, maybe somehow I could rep wetsuits. I could sell wetsuits. And that led to getting a weirdly and strangely, incredibly, a licensing deal to do Body Glove surfwear.
All down to Baywatch.
All down to Baywatch.
I like
from
it.
Bill and Bob Meistrel out of Hermosa Beach in California. And that was good. But at the same time, the King of Shaves business came about because I had quite bad skin. It was always quite rashy and spotty. I'd studied engineering at Poly. Body Shop was a big business at this time. What Anita Roddick was building up with natural and exotic essential oils. And somehow or other, I thought, well, oil lubricates engines, engineer speak. Natural oils must be good for your skin. That's Anita Roddick Body Shop. I wonder if you could shave with an oil. So then went out, bought a book on aromatherapy, bought some little oils from a chemist, blended them up in the bathroom, understood, for example, with a shaving oil, you have a carrier oil, which is a base oil, and then you have the essential oils, which are very powerful, that you've got to dose in to give you good skin benefits. So it's very much read a book, mix the formula, have a shave. It was quite oily, it was quite greasy. It wasn't obviously optimized to the level that we have today, but I didn't get razor burn. And from having razor burn all my life to not having razor burn, that was the business strategy. If it worked for me, it could work for a few other hundreds, thousands, and now we've done over 15 billion shaves in 27 years, or nearly 27 years.
Yeah, what do you think when you think of that number, 15 billion?
Well, it's unbelievable, isn't it, really? I mean, I think I'm quite a sensible guy. I try to keep my feet on the ground. I'm quite common sense. I've got a good degree of confidence, and it's important in business to have confidence. Confidence is quite sexy, not arrogance. Arrogance is bad, but confidence is good. And because it worked for me, it was okay, how can I test it with some other people? So a lot of people didn't have shaving problems, so they'll go, yeah, it's okay, I'll stick with Gillette. That was the only competitor. But people who did have shaving problems, then they loved it. So then it was off the back of that, it was, okay, I started off Singularity Will with his shaving oil, raised a little bit of money, £15,000 from my best friend from Polly, Pat, who worked in oil and gas exploration. So he had a few spare quid, and a management consultant.
So you're grateful to Pat then?
Pat, yeah, and then my mum put in £2,500 from her retirement fund, but we turned that into £500,000 within 8 years. So able to then give mum and dad, quite a lot of money back, and dad was able to learn to fly and bought a plane, for example. So that belief, though, in the product, I believed it. Then a lot of people didn't. They go, oh, go back into advertising, you're good at that. Go back into marketing, you're good at that. Didn't necessarily want you to succeed, but I knew it could work if I got it listed somewhere. That turned out to be Harrods. I rang up Mohammed Al Fayed. Phone number then 02, so it would have been 01 629 1234, and managed to get the product listed. Originally trying to get him via the buyer, but in the end just faxing him the product proposition.
So you actually phoned up the owner of Harrods?
Yeah.
Isn't that, what kind of made you do that anyway? Because people would just think there's no way I could do that.
Well, I think when there's people think no way, that's kind of a red rag to a bull. And I think, joining some dots, clearly I'd had the experience of telesales, so I kind of knew how to get through the firewall of the PA at the start. So Mohammed Al Fayed, he owned Harrods. Harrods was the world's best-known department store, best in the world. My proposition was King of Shaves. It's the world's best shave. If I can get you some samples and a commercial proposition, would you take a look at it? Send it over to Mr. Al Fayed. He'll look at it. Now, if you want to get hold of Jeff Bezos, I understand his email is jeff@amazon.com. Now, whether or not you believe that, it's up to you. I kind of know it's true. But you've got to get through the firewall to get to a decision maker there. Yeah. So the Harrods listing was important for the brand. World's best department store, in my opinion, King of Shaves, world's best shave, courtesy of my surname. But never going to get rich out of Harrods. But Boots, yes. So if I felt I could get Harrods, I could then go to Boots. And if I got Boots, I could go to Tesco and Tesco Sainsbury's. And that's how the journey unfolded between 93 and up until, really to date.
Yeah, because I think it's the same. I've heard other people talk about this kind of big domino, like go for the big domino in your kind of niche or your kind of area or field, because if you can get them on board, it's a lot easier. Like, as you were saying, if you've got Harrods on board, it's a lot easier to then go, to Boots and go, I've got Harrods on board, so you've got to have it, you must have it as well. And sort of creates that sort of like almost hype and I guess the need for the other brands because they see someone much bigger than them that's already on board.
Yeah, look, absolutely. So the hardest thing if you're starting up or scaling up a business is momentum. It's very difficult to deliver momentum from a 0 point. And it's much easier if a buyer sees another buyer has said yes. And then if 2 buyers have seen 2 buyers have said yes, then 4 buyers might say yes because they're in a herd, thinking that buyer surely hasn't got it wrong. And I don't want to miss out, fear of missing out, if something becomes big. And that's what happened with King of Shaves. We launched it. Our 2 competitors were Gillette and lack of awareness. Now, that's not the case now. Yeah. In men's grooming now, you've got dozens or hundreds or probably thousands of brands. You've got very big companies like your Gillettes and your Wilkinson Swords. You've got challenger brands now like your Dollar Shaves and your Harry's. You've got boutique men's brands. And then within there, everybody's got a little lifestyle brand, whether it's a shaving oil, a beard oil, a moisturizer, more recently makeup for men, whatever it might be. But then, and this is, I think, the strategy, luck, timing, and luck and timing is very important. If you didn't use Gillette, well, you basically didn't shave. And Gillette didn't have any competition. It had Colgate Palmolive that was very granddaddy, and Wilkinson Sword made razors and didn't have any shaving preparations, foams, gels, creams, oils. So we're not only able to get it into Harrods, then Boots, then start telling a story and buy shave.com for £18 and have an internet proposition. But then there was a huge growth in men's and lads mags throughout the 90s into the mid-2000s, FHM, GQ, Esquire, Loaded, Front Magazine. And we had basically from 93 to 2004 a run at the men's grooming market in the UK and internationally where it was just Gillette. Of course, Nivea for Men launched in 2000, L'Oreal Men Expert launched in 2004, but we'd already had 9 years by then. And I think the only caveat to that I'd say now is the internet now, everybody knows instantly what's about or going to happen. So, for example, if we talk about sunglasses later on, people know, or you can search Google to find trademarks or patent applications or this or that. Then nobody knew what other people were doing until it suddenly came out from being tiny to being multi-million-pound business. And then other businesses started to take notice. It's no coincidence that Nivea for Men launched in 99 because they're thinking, goodness me, we've got a great skincare brand. We just do it for women. Why don't we do a range for men, Nivea for Men? And that's how it all happened.
So how important, it sounds like internet was quite key in your success.
Yeah.
How important was your story or being able to tell a kind of different story, I guess, to like someone like Gillette?
So 2 things there, I think. First of all, it's the product. Okay, it's the product. It's always the product. If the product's amazing, people will buy it. If the product sucks, people won't. Or they might buy it once and never again. So that's why iPhone is, behind $1 trillion market cap business. It's why Nike and Adidas, are so successful. Porsche is still around with 911s or Ferraris. These are great products, okay? If you have a shabby product or a product that's good or not nearly as good as the other ones, or it's a bit cheaper than, or this or that, it will never go through to people wanting to buy it. Okay, that's very, very, very important. Then the second part is you've got to have a differentiated product. So why iPhone was so successful is until iPhone launched, all mobile phones had buttons, and some of them flipped like the Motorola Razr, the original one, or you had a BlackBerry. And then when iPhone launched 2007, I got one of the very first ones. I got it out of the States, shipped it to the UK, jailbroke it so it would roam on Vodafone. It didn't have buttons. And you go, oh my God, it doesn't have buttons. This is amazing. Then people say, oh yeah, but it gets a bit fingerprinty. That was their only criticism.
Yeah, okay.
Or you get a bit of, and you go, really?
Yeah.
It's amazing. And it's not really a phone. It's an enabler. And it's a facilitator. And it's a tool. And it will make your life, and clearly it's transformed people's lives. So you've got to have a great product, you've got to have a differentiated product, and then there's always got to be a genuine story, why you've done it.
Yeah.
So I've seen so many competitors to King of Shades come and go, oh, I struggle with shaving, I've done a shaving all this. No, I did this in 93. You've just said, oh, I can do that and tell that. No, it's Fugazi story. It's not genuine, it's not real. There's no backstory, there's no depth to it. And what you can use the internet for now, in a world of fake news, is you can delve quite deep into genuine backstories and people and what they've done and why they've done it. And people are looking for truth and authenticity and honesty in a world of fake news and we're not too sure and how this is happening. And when I look back 25 odd years, we were absolutely on the money, but from a very common sense perspective. Surname King, okay, call it King of Shaves, courtesy of my dad. Turned over the King of Spades playing card when we were playing Pontoon and said, why don't you call your product King of Shaves? It's your name. And I'm thinking, it's a bit arrogant. He said, well, it's your name. So we got that. Yeah. And then it was differentiated with our shaving oil. Nothing existed like that. A tube shaving gel with aloe that was very good in great lubrication ingredients and natural actives. Very different to a can of chemical shaving gel that came out and turned into a foam. And then it was, well, Will King, come on, let's be a challenger brand to Gillette. I was the David to the Gillette's Goliath, and pushed against that for the thick end of 20 years. And you've got to be able to push against something. Okay, that's why sprinters, when they run 100 metres, they've got blocks they've got to push against. You can't run 100 metres in a record time if you're starting upright and not pushing. You're just going. You've got to push. So we pushed against only one big competitor, market monopoly, very samey product, not made in UK, not age 26 like me, all of this stuff. And it, I guess, interwove that into a story that when people tried it and loved it and recommended it, that then became the internet, and word of mouth went into word of mouse, and now it's Twitter and Insta and TikTok or whatever it might be. As long as the product's great, hopefully you'll get a repeat purchase, and that's the key.
So how do you stay competitive? Like you talked about in those early days, it was mainly like one main competitor, but now you've got a whole kind of flood of different products and brands. How, like in whatever kind of product or niche or business that you might be in, how do you stay competitive when suddenly you've got a flood of competitors?
Yeah, so that's kind of tough, okay? So I have a saying which is embrace change as a constant. If you're always changing, you're not going to be afraid of change. So we've iterated, for example, our original shaving oil that we launched back in 93, a more advanced version in 98. We've recently, over the years, we've been improving the formulation, but now we've got 100% natural organic formula for it, which has taken a super long time to develop the ingredients that deliver the same quality shave without synthetics in there. And then we saw a couple of years ago with Blue Planet, we're in plastic. Plastic kills whales. That's very sad. Digging deeper into plastic, it lasts 500 to 600 years, so it's going to be around 10x longer than I'm ever going to be alive. Yet the products that we are using it to package is used within a matter of weeks or months. So when you look at that, you think this is not so good, really. It's okay for cars because cars need plastic in them and they'll go into a recycling and they won't ever enter into the mouth of a dolphin or a whale. But for sure, things like microbeads, plastic microbeads in scrubs, or small shaving oil bottles or shaving tubes or single-use plastic bottles, those will be around. So we, 2 years ago, started thinking about, okay, if we want to be a relevant, sustainable brand in a new millennium, let's call it 2020, 2030, a purpose-driven decade. We're aware of climate change emergency. We're aware of the huge issues around the world with regard to the environment. Surely if we're just selling a product as simple as shaving and getting a good shave, we don't want to be then messing up the planet down the track with 70% of beauty products ending up in landfill, as they do. So because we got ahead of that curve and launched this Code Zero packaging, zero plastic packaging initiative this time last year, then have made the move to meddle with King of Shaves with our best-selling SKUs coming into that in the next couple of months. We're already changing where our competitors are yet to even think about changing. And you might argue, you know, the key is to be ahead of the curve, but not too far ahead of the curve. But if you don't take, you know, the time, effort and interest to do it, you definitely don't want to be one of the late laggards who's done it because everybody else has, because that's not good. So I've always been into changing and innovating and repeatedly question why things are, how they can be better, what I can do as a tiny cog, business person, brand, product in the world of products and stuff. But for example, you know, even 2 years ago, I'd be drinking water probably out of a single-use plastic bottle. And I've got heavy glass that will last hopefully a good few decades unless it's broken. So there's little things and lots of little iterative changes that my mind, which is kind of endlessly and restlessly curious about why things are the way they are, not too sure why that is, it just kind of is, So I'm quite restless. So I'm always quite, okay, is it good? Is it good? What are we doing? What are we doing? And rather than sitting back thinking, oh, we've sold, 20,000 of those this week, we'll send 20,000 next week and 20,000 a week after. Well, what if suddenly people don't want to buy shaving gels in plastic tubes anymore? You might sell none. That would not be so good. So always, challenging convention and, looking if there's a different way to do things or a better way.
So where do you want Code Zero to go then? Because you're obviously quite into sustainability at the moment. Where do you kind of see that brand going?
So what's happened since we announced two things last year, in April last year? First of all, we did a press event where we said, look, King of Shaves is in plastic. Plastic lasts a long time. We believe there'll be legislation coming down the track, whether it's British, whether it's European, whether it's international, around the use of packaging substrates which aren't easily recycled, or even if they are recyclable, aren't, because the facilities don't exist to recycle them. So then it's pretty binary. If they can't be recycled or the facilities don't exist, they get landfilled, which is not so good. Okay? So I've got a 20-year-old son, Cam, and I don't want him living in a world of landfill, particularly. So one of the relatively easy ways to look at it was to take our shaving gel, which is in a plastic tube, and we sell tens of thousands of those a week, and then take that out of a plastic tube into a beautiful metallic aluminium pumpable dispenser, and then refill that with a plastic pouch, which uses 86% less plastic, and it goes into the same what's called waste stream as, for example, shopping bags will go into, like your Tesco or your Sainsbury's bags. So not perfect, but from going from a 100% plastic, we've gone to 14% plastic. And then the next part of that will be then to look at the pump. Can you get to a metal pump? And then when you get to the refill pouches, and all of this costs less per shave than the original plastic tube, can you then get to, let's call it an unplastic refill pouch? Now, this is tough stuff to solve. Okay, you'd think you'd have plenty of companies out there working on it, kind of not really, saying they are, but aren't really not.
Do you think that's the case then?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, okay.
So because we've spent now a year, 18 months meeting and presenting to retailers what we're intending to do. The initiative around Code Zero, which is more of a movement than a brand, and I'll explain where we're going with it, was, okay, why don't we try to zero out bad stuff, whether it's sexism, whether it's misogyny, whether it's plastic, whether it's racism, whether it's whatever it might be. And also I'm a sailing guy, and a Code Zero is a sail that you hoist on a high performance yacht to get you somewhere fast.
Oh, right, okay, I see.
Okay, and then the little logo, which is a lemniscate, an infinity symbol, reference the K of King of Shaves, but it's also, you'll see, it's not a true lemniscate, it's not an infinity symbol, it ends with the K, so it's not perfect yet. So the first, what we tried then to do was
That's good design, I like that. You thought about it a lot.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of I think fabric in and thought into this. So we then looked at King of Shaves. Okay, what could we do? What could we do? This is just with the shaving bit, which is not where Code is going to be doing. But okay, why don't we design a lifetime use aluminium container? Why don't we then have a yay oldie worldy shave stick in it? But let's formulate that in a modern, really cool way. And then when you've used it up, when you're shaving with it, you put it on there and rub it in and shave. You then, as you've got here, the refill for it, which is all 100% plastic. So there's no plastic in the shaving solution, which was good. So, and we did a sponsorship, a partnership with Surfers Against Sewage, became one of their partners, and sponsored the Plastic Free Awards. So with the Code Zero project, what that then became was a bit of a mission into, could we develop a 100% unplastic solution where Code becomes let's call it an ingredient brand, a packaging platform, a technology, a means of achieving something, and then use that type of intellectual property, IP, not only for brands that we might launch, but also for other brands. So, for example, a lot of deodorants are sold in plastic, push-up plastic. Could we take this design and repurpose it into a deodorant format? And then, more importantly, could we find a substrate, a refill, that would be 100% unplastic? And that's taken the past 18 months. And where we are with that now, we had to file some patents around how that would work, although we'll probably look at licensing that out at a very small amount to companies to use, let's say Axe or Lynx deodorants or Sure deodorants or whatever they might be. Why wouldn't you embrace what we spent 2 years doing for your business? And then we'll use this Code Zero packaging format, which would be for lip balms and for deodorants and for hair products and for moisturizers and for shaving gels and for lots of things. Lots of things that aren't men's shave. You know, this is now gender neutral, humanity, toiletries products, and launch a brand that would use this Code Zero packaging. And that's what we'll be doing, well, hopefully later this year, as he touches a bit of laminate there. If not this year, it'll be early next year. And launch a genuinely unplastic, lifetime use refillable solution. And this is something I can't really show you, so I'll cover it up a little bit. But this is a aluminium, and it's a refillable lip balm, and it looks amazing and beautiful. And when you take it out to use it, it's great to use. All the lip balms that you'll see are plastic, and with this, it loads in from underneath.
Yeah, that's clever.
Yeah.
So we're getting a bit of exclusive here. Is this a prototype then?
Well, it's kind of a real production prototype, real thing. So there's some IP filed on it. But if you imagine that format, think of Nespresso capsules for your lips.
Yeah.
But without the plastic or the very unrecyclableness of some of those. So that's been shown to a lot of UK retailers now, and I'm travelling in the next month or so to present to international retailers. But it's a big change because the thing with plastic's beautiful to work with as a substrate. It's cheap. It's a byproduct of drilling for oil. Consumers understand it. And what we've got to try and do is develop something lifetime use refillable with a delightful aluminium feels like an iPhone, but the refills are made from a biodegradable compostable substrate that when it goes into the food stream, it doesn't end up in the bellies of dolphins. And this is tough stuff. And we know that we're one of the few companies in the toiletries industry genuinely in production on it, not talking about it. And it's been a big 18-month journey and not easy at all.
Because how do you think, or how do you feel, knowing that potentially you're helping change the future somewhat in reducing the amount of waste and, plastics and going towards a more sort of zero waste future?
Look, I mean, goodness me, if somebody like me can't do it as founder of a business and he's got a certain reputation and profile of trying to improve on things, and then, as I say, having a 20-year-old son and wondering what sort of world he's going to grow up into, and then knowing that if you set your mind to it, you can change things. It's not easy, and is costing a lot of money to obviously then dents the company's profits, but that's kind of okay because it's privately owned and I'm the biggest shareholder, so it is what it is. But if we just carried on repping plastic, then there'll come a time when the consumer will say, don't want the plastic, and then it crashes the brand. So there's a mixture of, let's call it commercial in there. There's also what's going on in my mind, which is about what's the right thing to do. Surely, if I know inside I should be changing for better forever, I've got to put that into practice or I'm a bit fake. So it's a balance there. I think maybe a little different with me as a brand founder owner guy versus, let's say, somebody's working, I don't know, wherever it might be, at Procter & Gamble, at Unilever, at Nestle or whatever, where they're under big commercial pressure, or Coke, for example. Yeah. You know, Coke's under a lot of pressure to go back to glass where it was before plastic and aluminium came along. But for them, that will crash the profitability of that business substantially because of the costs of doing that. So it's going to resist. But sooner or later, people might stop drinking Coke because it's sold in plastic bottles that they don't want to end up killing dolphins. But they do still like Coke. So if I was looking at that multinational business with billions of dollars of revenue in it, of course, you can't crash the economics of the business. But at the same time, you do want Coke to be around for the next generation and the generation after that. Or somebody else will come along and do it, and then you won't be relevant anymore. As like happened with Apple and iPhone, Nokia had 64% market share of smartphone sales worldwide in 2007. Now it doesn't exist as a mobile phone brand. So although we're just talking about packaging here, and although what we're doing is relatively small potatoes in the greater scheme of things, lots of little leads to lots of large. And we're just one of the lots of little.
Because I guess it's changing people's habits and their thinking, isn't it? And attitudes to certain products, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah.
So that's big. That's a big kind of thing you're trying to achieve, isn't it?
That's the hardest thing, okay? Because you've got to change human behaviour. That's tough to do. And the only way you do that is by making the new behaviour better than, or at least as good as the past behaviour, but without necessarily the negative impact coming there. So when you're looking at, for example, deodorants or lip balms, you buy deodorant, let's say it's a natural push-up stick deodorant, you put it under your arms, it goes down. There's lots of different types of plastic in that deodorant. When you finish with it, you put it into your plastic recycling. You'll think it will go into a recycling stream. 70% chance, well, 30% chance it will, 70% chance it won't. So another bit of your stinky pits product is landfilling up in the UK or in the world. So with regard to whether it's lip balms or deodorants, if you can come up with a refill that you then put it in something beautiful in aluminium that can have brand laser etched on it, like this is, that doesn't then use inks, and then you have a QR code off the back of it that you can bit with your smartphone to auto reorder, whether it's from a retailer or whether it's from a website, and then when you come to refill it, you refill it. But what you're refilling it with, yes, it doesn't look as attractive as a beautiful piece of black plastic, but nobody's seen that anyway because it's in a beautiful aluminium container. All you're ever seeing is the function of the product and the beautiful container, and it's the same with a mobile phone. All you see is the outside look of it. Don't know what's going on inside it, but it does the job. But it's definitely behavioural change, and I think that's going to be the big tell in the next couple of years when we launch these products into retail markets, not just online, but the big retailers on shelves, where they'll have plastics and they'll have refills. So we're going to need to encourage the retailers to develop refill sections for toiletries products, which is starting to happen, but so few are doing it right now. It's very new and scary, especially if you're a retailer.
Yes, because I guess a lot of it comes down to, suppose if you're a business owner, is I'm going to take a gamble on profits, and it could ruin the business, or people just actually go, well,
won't buy it.
Yeah, well, the profits are more important to me than maybe the environment because I'm not going to be around in 20, 30 years. And we've got that kind of unfortunate way of thinking.
Yeah, I mean, when it was announced in the press, so, we were quite upfront that the input costs of doing initiatives like that, by input costs, I mean the cost of manufacturing materials and stuff like that, are going to be higher, okay? But the bet was the long-term output of it will be more sustainable. And, of course, as soon as you start to get things to scale, so let's say the first run of the shaving gels and shaving oil cans is 100,000 runs, okay? We'd normally do them in 1 million runs and call-offs, so in plastic. So your cost per is higher. But as we transition out of plastic tubes into aluminium pumps, and then as we transition refills, which are less expensive for the consumer to buy, tick, and just squirt it in, well, hopefully you can do that, tick, and hopefully the King of Shaves product, delivers the same result. What would you rather do? Spend £6 on repeatedly buying pumps and aluminium bottles, or £2.99 to buy the refill, which is then 75p cheaper than the equivalent shaving product. But that's yet to be demonstrated at retail. We've done a lot of trial with it and panel testing with it, and with about 1,000 people, and they love it, and it's good. But until you start addressing a general public which has historically bought what it's bought, and you've then got to try and get them to buy what you'd like them to buy, there's quite a lot of comms and messaging and behavioural change that you need to put out there, and it's very important.
That's kind of a long game plan, isn't it?
Well, I think within 3 to 5 years, and definitely by the end of the 2020s, there'll have been a huge amount of wholesale change in the UK. I mean, look, apparently you can't sell new petrol or diesel cars in the UK after 2035. We may or may not have driverless cars by then. You've got a whole electric.
I'm hoping so.
Well, as long as they don't kill people, these driverless cars, I think we'd all be happy. But clearly, you know, a plane flies on autopilot, yeah? I mean, planes can take off and land without a pilot. They just happen to have a pilot there in case something goes wrong. And I guess the context with an electric or driverless car is it won't have that human in it. So, but that will happen because I think it has to happen. But by the end of the decade, it will be a very, very different decade to 2010, 2020. Very different decade to that. And that will be driven by the younger people, Zoomers and Gen Zs, and mid to late stage millennials who are coming of age into my age bracket. I'm Gen X in there. And I think people will look at things differently. And, you know, unless brands and businesses like ours who are able to shape change or provoke thought or behavioural, whatever it might be. For me, it's no different to people shaving with a can of shaving gel and me giving them a tiny little bottle of shaving oil. And I go, how can that work? And I said, why don't you try it? Just add water and you can see we were shaving. So hugely popular with the armed forces, for example, a bit random, but they have to be clean shaven, and hugely popular. And then after they'd finish using the shaving oil, they'd put their gun oil to keep the guns. They'd store the gun oil in in a container. Yeah, but because of that, our brand travelled a lot internationally with servicemen around the world, which is incredible, really. But rather than a big can of shave gel or a big can of shave foam, so they've got to pack it down small into their backpacks and travel light. So the change can be affected, but it's got to be changed for good, and what you've got to be providing is a better product, not just a same product, differently packaged. That isn't going to necessarily work.
So talking about success, during your journey then, what are the kind of moments where you felt really successful, and what does success mean to you?
Oh, goodness me. Look, so I look back on my life. 93, you know, out of work, redundant, all of this. Founded King of Shaves. First few years pretty tough, but very satisfying. 98 onwards, I look back every year after 98 and think, oh, that's been a good year, that's been a good year, that's been a good year. The changes are constant, embrace changes are constant. I guess highlights in it, well, I don't know, building a business and brand up, you know, for example, signing a deal with Ted Baker, the fashion brand, back in 1997, 98, when that was doing 15 million quid in sales, and helping build up a multi-million-pound fragrance business there, working with lots of other brands and businesses and products and projects, developing our own proprietary razor, first of all laser and then Hyperglide. And although those didn't cut through to the level I needed them to commercially against Gillette, I mean, Gillette basically went 50% off all their products as soon as we launched our razor in 2008. So we didn't get the commercial result there, but we did sell 6 million handles and we did sell 40 million cartridges, and it was done by a small team in the UK. And the Hyperglide tech, which was a very clever just add water and shave, we actually sold that for a lot of money in 2016. Not to Gillette, but to another company. Yeah. So there's been lots of, when the team and I have come up with products or projects or ideas, they've typically been successful. We've had a few not so good ones. We had a licensing deal with Speedo that didn't work out in 2003 because people didn't really want to buy a Speedo shampoo. Happy to wear the swimsuit or the trunks, but not buy the products. That cost the company a lot of money, but that's long time ago now.
When do you realise, do you see that as a failure then, or
Learning?
Okay. When do you, with that learning then, when do you know, okay, we've kind of given it our all, now's the time to kind of get out of this?
Oh, I mean, that was pretty apparent. But to give you an idea, we were selling tens of thousands of King of Shades products a week out of big retailers, and we had 4 big retailers listing Speedo products. There were a total of something like 25 or 30 Speedo products. We were selling 19. So that was pretty self-evident. Oh, this is not going to work. However much money we push at this, we're not going to go from 19 to 1900 to 19,000. We need to work our way out of that. And that was an expensive lesson because we'd signed a licensing deal and that cost a lot of money.
Was that quite a shock when you got those sort of figures back?
Yeah, because I think at that time we'd not had any failures whatsoever.
Okay.
I mean, basically we could rock up to any retailer with any idea and launch it. And
that's a great position to be in then, isn't it?
Well, but I think we needed to have the lesson of actually you can't. But that came with a third-party brand, and that was our mistake, that we'd sort of tried to probably take some of our core product brand values and impose it onto another, but that brand wasn't able to resonate with what we were trying to do with it. So the theory looked great. Speedo is a $2 billion business, had worldwide brand recognition. Surely people who swam or were active, who got chlorine in their hair, would enjoy a product that would deal with the chlorine removal bit of it. But the reality was people just used Head and Shoulders. And there we are, did the job, didn't care, it was called Speedo.
Yeah, okay.
So that was definitely a learning. But the success piece, I think it's when you've started a business and you're able to shape the direction of its growth and what it's doing, huge, I've enjoyed the success of a lot of people who've worked with me, have gone on to be super serious, super high up, super successful people, whether they're with big brands like Unilever's or P&G's, or running their own businesses, or done their own brands, or seen what we've done. And I guess looking back on it, there's a satisfaction of success that so far we've not put too many feet wrong. A lot of my team is still with me 20, 25 years after I started. And now we're on a slightly different, evolving journey around trying to make our brand more sustainable, and in a world which needs to have that thinking there. And if nothing else, we can be a lightning rod for others to also look at it in that way. I'll feel that's successful, and the job's kind of getting done better than if we weren't doing it.
So what do you want your legacy to be then, Will?
Oh, I don't know. He came, he saw, he shaved lives, he shaded eyes, he did something else, he was a good bloke, he died. Something like that. I mean, it's not necessarily a legacy thing. I think you do look back on the dots you've joined over your life. I mean, in a weird way, it's goodness me, I know how much I hated shaving. I know how annoying it was. We've had, hundreds or thousands now, tens of thousands of people. You've changed my life. It's just so lovely. So if nothing else, on a very product level, we made better products made in UK over a long time. There's definitely then, with mum and dad being teachers, I enjoy reciprocity. So I do a lot, which people don't know about, under the radar, behind the scenes, this, that, and the other, trying to help people get to where they want to be. And then overall just try and, he was not a bad guy. He was a good guy. He worked hard. He didn't do bad. And, he lived a life worth living. And it's been an incredible 26 years so far. Unimaginable, really, when I look back to walking out of my conference production company and putting the car keys back in the door and going over to the pub and drowning my sorrows at the Legless Ladder in Battersea. It's been okay.
Why is it important for you to help other people that are, maybe lower a lot earlier in that kind of journey of starting a business or starting their career?
Look, I think, again, it goes back to the parents. So parents were educationalists or teachers, mum and dad. So dad was teacher at my comprehensive school and mum was at the primary school, Pakefield Primary. So we lived we were brought up, my two brothers, in a world where knowledge was important and education was important and sharing that was important. And maybe it's in my nature or maybe it's something else, but because I wasn't good enough competitively at sailing in the 80s, I got into being one of the best sailing instructors in the 80s, definitely, and the youngest, definitely. And all my mates were Olympic level sailing instructors. And now they're in America's Cup. And now they're senior yachtsmen, and now they've grown up. I was very good at teaching sailing. And when you're a sailing instructor, you're running sailing courses. You have lots of sailing instructors working for you in dinghies with students. And then you've got to be very good at getting the right instructor. If they're not very good, you say, I don't want you to work for me. And if they're very good, you give them more responsibility. But that sharing of knowledge out was with me from 14, 15, 16 years old. When you got into, having then been made redundant, starting my own business, and then seeing how tough it was, after I'd come out the tough of the 93 to 98, we then had the internet. You then had opportunities opening up. You then had workplaces changing, substantively changing, not just careers in banking or finance or this or lawyer or that. You could be entrepreneur. So you could be a Richard Branson or you could be an Alan Sugar. I mean, those are pretty the binary reference points in the 90s. Well, it's basically Richard Branson. Alan Sugar was regarded as a bit of a wheeler-dealer guy. So that became accessible, and then nobody knew how to do it. And then there were outliers like me who had started or were doing it. And then you were able, if you just internalize your knowledge and you don't share it, then that's not so good, really. That's why people write books or they do podcasts. It's like you're doing here. You're interviewing me in the hope that I guess I'll share some nuggets or pearls of wisdom that people might latch up on, and this, that, and the other. And it's a reciprocal thing. And we met in Cardiff through Great British Entrepreneurs and all of this and that. But you knew the business and brand. And I think if you're able, or you have a skill in sharing, and you have something worth sharing. I mean, a lot of people argue with me, he's got nothing worth sharing, really. But let's just assume I have a little bit. There's a great satisfaction to that. Now, a lot of people will keep it to themselves. Well, that's fine. It depends what market you're in. If you're in finance markets, you might want to share your secrets to success to everybody else. But if it's a different entrepreneur play, business space opportunity, then I guess you look at it, or I look at it differently. And I think mum and dad, if they said, oh, why don't you just do this or that? And they've taken great pride in coming to some of my talks and seeing what I've done and the lives I've shaped. And I've taken great, enjoyment in seeing some of the outputs of talking to people, especially at schools, where you can change perception and then outcome. So I guess it's, if you don't share, you don't learn. It's a knowledge reciprocity thing, and I enjoy that.
You mentioned you felt like an outlier, or you believe you are an outlier. Do you think you've always?
90s, yeah.
Do you think you always felt like that, or was it just in the 90s? And can you explain to our viewers and listeners what you define as an outlier?
Goodness me. So, I mean, look, in the 90s, really, when you think back, okay, what was entrepreneur in the 90s? Well, the phrase didn't really exist, okay? You started your own business. It's now been, let's call it, sexed up a little bit with entrepreneur or whatever it might be, all right? So it's the language has changed. When I did King of Shaves, I knew of nobody of my peer group or anybody else who'd done anything like start a business to try and challenge Gillette. Not too sure why I just picked on that. It happened to be the market, yeah? There's one competitor, it was Gillette, and there was Will King of Shaves. And that sort of triggered an probably a much more amplified business than Will King starting a plumbing business or a sandwich business. Although in the 80s, the guys started Pret-a-Manger, or Pret, as it is now. goodness me, sandwiches that tasted nice. I mean, they were used to be British Rail sandwiches and didn't taste nice. So I think the outlieriness or the unusualness in the 90s, because we didn't have the internet and because entrepreneur as a phrase was not known to the level it is now, and even if you did start a business, it would just be a business that doesn't sound so sexy. It's the whole language around that has changed. So I was able to be involved in a very early wave that was then massively amplified with the internet coming along, and the internet allowed things to be shared for free at scale. Yeah, basically that's what it did. You could search knowledge at scale and you could share free at scale. And that over-amplified everything there. And I think the people now, when you look at it, and this is a very important point, we've had 10 years where, because of Instagram and Twitter and social, the growth of Facebook to a mature business, everything on the face of it looks pretty easy. You can set up an Instagram account. You can take a nice photo of some clothes. You can say, I'm going to sell these clothes. Or shaving products or trainers or whatever it might be. But as easy as it is to do that, anybody can do that. And then you've then got to have not just a few dozen people, but tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or millions of people engaging with you. So you then, for example, the Kylie and the Kardashians and the celebrities and the hundreds of millions of followers on Instagram and Twitter, and Kylie Jenner doing $1 billion cosmetics brand within 4 years. Well, she's been able to do that. She's Kylie Jenner, and she has 130 million people who are hanging on her every word, who might buy into the Kylie Jenner look. But you've got to be Kylie Jenner before you do it. If you do a cosmetics brand and it's just a new cosmetics brand, well, why would anybody? How are you going to get people to come to that? So it's never been easier to start a business and be entrepreneur. It's never been harder to make it successful, because everybody has an opportunity to do it. And over, like I said, with the past 10 years, you've had a growth of what I call D2C channels, direct-to-consumer channels, the internet, Glossier's or Dollar Shave Club in MySpace or Harry's. Between the two of those businesses, Dollar Shave and Harry's, they raised and spent $700 million. That's why there isn't really an equivalent here. What's now happened as we've come out of the 2020s going to the 2030s is none of those businesses ever made any money. They took in a lot of money from investors in the hope that a company would buy them and therefore give the founders an exit.
Bit of a gamble then, really.
Right. So now, because of what's happened, for example, at WeWork, which was valued at nearly $50 billion and is now basically a bankrupt business, people are looking at, let's go back to simply making money again as a metric, which is a good thing. If you make some money, you can pay some bills. If you lose a lot of money, you have to pay investors back. So a lot of entrepreneurs now have lived in this 10 years of, we can raise money from VCs and we can scale the business and exit. But that's now stopped, especially in consumer packaged goods. And it's much tougher because people are looking at the ability to scale this sort of internet-driven business, this social-driven business, because it's never going to make any money. So weirdly, old-school businesses and brands are coming back a bit, where you sell to a retailer, they sell it to a consumer, we make money, the retailer makes money, the consumer enjoys the product. So it's easy to do a business now. It's super difficult to get a very differentiated, very scalable business. And the barriers to entry have never been lower, but the ability to succeed has never been harder. But if you're going back to being a passionate, persistent type of person, and you genuinely believe in what you're doing and why you're doing it, there will be people out there who will buy into what your mission, mission, value, purpose are. So it all only comes back to, it's got to be great. Arguably, it's got to be greater than great to get the cut through.
Yeah, because how do you cut through the noise of like everyone trying to sort of go, I'm doing this, I'm promoting this?
Well, exactly. So again, when I founded the business many years ago, there were 4 TV channels, soon to be 5. Yeah, I think Channel 5 was launched in '97 by the Spice Girls, something like that. Now, no young person, Zoomer, millennial, or person, let's say, arguably under 30, consumes broadcast TV in the way that they did. They don't wait around for EastEnders to come up every Monday and Wednesday and Friday at 7:30. They'll somehow ignore it or not watch it or watch something else. So it's now instantly on demand. And you've then got the fact that people are consuming through screen, not a big TV. So that's when you have the average, I think the average age of an ITV viewer is 61.
Really?
That's why Love Island was such a big thing for ITV, because it attracted a 25, 34 viewing demographic, which you would never be able to get. And then that specifically and ideally worked for the .com fashion brands, boohoo.com, those sort of online brands where you'd see celebrities wearing clothes and you could shop the look, which they put out on their Instagrams, all of that. So now there's obviously dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens and hundreds of thousands of ways of buying products and getting there. But to get the cut through, you've got to have the singularity of purpose. So right now, one of the big singularity of purposes is sustainability. If you're not a sustainable business, I don't really want to talk to you as a young person. If you're going to mess around the planet, I don't really want to talk to you. So right now, naming, would you say Nike's a sustainable business? Not necessarily. Would you say Adidas? Not necessarily. Would you say, however, a brand that's called Allbirds, which is come out of New Zealand, $1 billion valuation, footwear brand where the upper is merino wool and the sole is bamboo? Yes. So that's instantly been ripped off by Amazon and lots of others and the X, Y, and Z. But who would have thought you could launch a new brand of training shoe in 2017 when you had Adi and Nike and all the other brands out there? Well, you could if you did a wool-based upper and a bamboo manufactured lower, unplastic. But that was it's now nearly 4 years ago. So if you're thinking about doing that now, you're probably 4 years off the curve. Or you're able to do it now because the market's becoming aware of it. So the noise, one of our biggest issues at King of Shaves is the user demograph's grown up with me. I was 27, I'm 54, I've got a kid. I'm middle-aged, I'll be 60 in 6 years. Do I resonate with 18 to 34-year-olds? Not sure. Maybe, maybe not. Depends if they've seen their dad using King of Shaves growing up. But actually, 50% of men or 60% of men are now very ambivalent about shaving. You don't have to be clean-shaven to come into work anymore. I've chosen to have King of Shaves to see you, and it's great you've clean-shaven. But to work behind a screen and code, you can look while you look in a hoodie and just your pajamas. There's no, necessity to be clean shaven, and that clearly, has an effect there. And how do we then get young people who don't need to shave anymore, or X or Y or Z? This is very complex. So I guess we've just got to make the best products with nearly 11,000 reviews online, authentic, genuine reviews online, that if you are going to choose a shaving product, we're the best product to choose. I guess that's all you can do. And then do your best to shape the business and make it relevant and sustainable and appealing to younger people. But it's definitely, when you're a brand founder, keeping reinventing and youthful, it's a hard thing to do, but if you're always trying to do it, it's not so hard. It's a bit like bite-sized homework, I guess. Lots of little gets you a long way.
Do you want to talk about King of Shades?
Sure.
And how that all came about?
Yeah, so, this is a little, I don't know, it was a little side hustle, let's say, and it's getting a little bit bigger, but they'll think, what's he doing? Shaving lives to shading eyes. But there's a story behind it. So in 2010, I went to a car launch with my then girlfriend and now wife, a lady called Tiger Savage, who's a famous creative director. She came up with the example, the Lynx effect, many years ago.
Amazing, yeah.
And she's worked for Nike and Adidas and British Airways and Virgin and done lots and lots of stuff. But the Lynx is just an easy easy one to reference.
Is she still proud of that?
She is. I mean, we were talking about that the other day. I mean, we live in a world of Me Too now, but the thing with the Lynx Vet was spray more, get more. You know, but you got to keep spraying it on to be attracted. It happened then, back in the 90s, it was boy and girl, but now it could easily be boy and boy or girl and girl. It doesn't really matter. And in fact, since they went to Find Your Magic, it didn't work out so well, and they're now trying to decide what to do to, I guess, repurpose the Lynx effect for 20,
that's a hard thing to try and top, isn't it?
It is. So, we're digressing there. So came back to this King of Shades. Okay, so you think, oh, that's quite funny. So we trademarked it. But what would make it...
So they actually wrote under your photo...
Yeah, Will King, founder of King of Shades, and his wife, Tiger Savage.
So were you kind of annoyed first off, or were you actually like, oh, that's...
No, it was funny.
There.
I mean, it was like, that's crazy. Because obviously I'd owned King of Shades since 93 and not trademarked King of Shades or anything else. And Tiger said, you must trademark that. And I said, okay, it's quite funny. It's only 180 quid to trademark, or 170 pounds.
So were you like straight online? Had you already registered like the domain name or anything?
No, none of that. No. So we just had to trade. So we trademarked it, and then 6 years we didn't do anything with it. And they go, why not? And I said, well, what would make King of Shades sunglasses King of Shades? What would make them, the best? It's so easy to buy product out of China or out of the Far East, and you can brand slap it, what we call brand slap it on the side, give it a logo, come up with some clever name for some lenses, say it's thermonuclearized that or whatever, Oakley. What they would do, you don't have the backstory of a Ray-Ban, you're not designer like Chanel or Dior. Why would I buy them? And that for 6 years was a big challenge. So then we went to LA in 2016, and we're staying at a great hotel there on Sunset called the Mondrian, lying by the pool. Says to me, "Are you ever going to do these King of Shades? You've surely got one more brand left in you." And I said, "Look, Tix, it's kind of not easy. What's going to make them King of Shades?" She said, "I don't know. You'll sort it out."
Is that almost like a sort of competition set by your wife there?
Well, not really. It was just like, I think there's when you're advertising creative director, you know, let's say so Lynx walks in the door to Bart Bogle Hegarty, yeah? We've got a body spray for men. We want to sell more of it. Nobody wanted to touch it. They wanted to work on Levi's or Audi or something sexy and cool, not some body spray. And Tiger took it on and then campaigned it, and it became a meme, it became a thing. And, you know, incredible. But unless she had the product, she couldn't have done the creative, yeah? And I had no product. So came back to UK and started thinking about it. I've always collected sunglasses. I've always had a lot of sunglasses. And here, like, for example, here we are. Here's a pair of readers, okay? And you take them off. They're a bit wobbly in the frames, even though they're by Iron Man. They shouldn't be so wobbly. And when you're sailing, you want your sunglasses to stay on. So when we developed some of our products at King of Shades, we'd work with some moulding specialists. And what I wondered in November 2016 was, could you go from one arm, two arms, mechanical hinge, lenses pressed in, lots of bits of plastic, lots of this, to a simplicity of purpose product where you have a frame, you can switch the lenses in and out of it, you might have different colours within there to colour code it. More importantly, you can have a sunglass that's self-closed. So when you take it off, it would close down and you could put it into your pocket. And that eureka moment took 6 years to get to, and it's taken a subsequent 4 years to put the patents in and the design and the engineering, with these launching as King of Shades Shugs. And Shugs is sunglass that hugs. That's just a simple acronym for it. 5 letters, got the trademark for it. But if you're sailing or snowboarding or walking around, you're not repeatedly getting the Clark Kent slip down of your nose, which I flipping well do get with these coming down all the time.
So did you actually write that down, like problems, the Clark Kent sort of effect?
Yeah, it's all in the deck. But the most, look, there's a Kickstarter ready to go. I'm not too sure if we'll do it. We've had retailers get in touch. I'm not too sure. People who want to license it have seen a patent on it. All of this stuff. But I think the things that I'm proud of is, coming up with a simple like a K logo, which points into the active part of the hinge.
Nice.
The ability to have the lenses that you can pop in and out and change, so you change your looks by the lenses. But the key thing being they're really comfortable to wear because they're like Under Armour compression. They're gently pressing in to your face.
Kind of let's have a go then.
And a lot of glasses, they mechanically
They're not
press
going
in.
to fly off the head, are they?
Well, let's hope. I've got it all
it's
wrong.
It's going to be good for kind of sports people as well, isn't it? Because
Yeah.
I guess you were kind of thinking sailing first off,
Yeah.
from your own personal experience, and then I suppose you're thinking,
Well, anything where you don't want to lose them, and I think the fact you can pop them around your neck, if you want to demonstrate that, rather than there. So for women, they obviously normally put them in the hair, but also when you're out sailing and stuff or walking around, they often can get off your head, and then you lose your sunglasses.
Yeah, it can be an expensive hobby buying sunglasses.
Exactly. So a lot of sunglasses they're developed around the lenses, but to be honest with you, the lens is a lens now. You can get amazing lenses. I can get access to amazing lenses, but there's not another pair of sunnies on the planet which has this shugging action. And then the product roadmap is then to take them into reading glasses. So spectacles, which you're wearing, like these are, 2.5 readers. They're from Iron Man, whoever owns that. I don't know, Foster Grant or somebody, I think. I don't wear glasses all the time. But you then get into frame glasses, and what you do want to have is that they last a long time and you don't, break them. And the intriguing thing, I think, with the Shugs is that, unbreakable, is that you can do that.
Can you just explain to the listener then what you've been doing on the table here?
Just extending them out, and
because that would break a normal pair of glasses, wouldn't it?
Yeah,
don't do it on your own.
I don't do it with those. But I think the thing is with I'm 54. So why are you doing a range of sunglasses? I think, why am I doing the range of sunglasses? I can only do something if it's genuinely better or differentiated, or there's a desire or an interest in doing it. It's taken 10 years from this first trademark photograph. 10 years. Astonishing. I even can't believe myself. I was 44 when I started doing it. It's taken me 10 years. But lots of overnight successes happen over a long time. And as long, as people, I think, when these go into the wild for the testing, and the consumer feedback, and I start getting them hopefully on the heads of some top-class athletes out there and some people who will objectively feedback, it's not as good as I thought, it's actually really good. Let's hope they're the latter, not the former. There's a delight there, and it's not just another product that the world doesn't need, and it's been enjoyable. And then I've been in control of it with the design team, of course, but they kind of look how I want them to look. And that's very satisfying. And I'm sure with you, doing all of the work that you do in film and video and even podcasting, this has got a feel and an appeal that you'd like it to have. And there's a great satisfaction when it comes to product about how you engender that.
Have you ever thought about tracking down the person that made that kind of mistake in the newspaper under your photo then?
Well, it was originally a Getty Photos one, which has now come off. It was for it was at Vinyl Factory, which is a product launch venue, and it was for a BMW Mini electric scooter concept, and it was had a famous supermodel there, Agnes somebody who was there, and it's never seen the light of day, the scooter. So the photos went up, and we saw that, and then we've been trying to find them in the Getty Library, and haven't been able to find them. But that trigger of doing it, but on the website you'll see there's a photo of Tiger and I sitting, I think, at a Vivienne Westwood fashion show, and it's part of the journey. I then also tried to register King of Shakes. Do you think for a milkshake, a shake business?
Oh, that's quite good, yeah.
But sadly, Burger King had that.
Really? Yeah, okay.
So,
have you tried loads of variations now?
well, I then have people saying to me, "Why don't you do this, or why don't you do that, or why don't you do the other?" And
Has it got to begin with the S?
Well, I guess so. I guess so. Look, even with these, I think these will become hopefully known as shugs, sunglasses that hug.
Yeah.
The King of Shades is more of a, if you know the brand, you might get it. It's quite funny in terms of changed a letter, looking at another industry, but it's linked to the surname. I think it's not dissimilar with Shugs working with that. It's what we're doing with Code Zero as the packaging platform. That will almost certainly be put into a new company, and that will be a platform that powers a brand new brand. So people don't go, oh, is it a King of Shaves brand? You say, no, it's a new sustainable toiletries brand. Oh, is this not King of Shaves? No, it's a new brand and a new company. So I think the only hangback where Virgin and what Richard's been able to do with Virgin over the years, take it into a variety of different businesses, had it been King of Airlines or King of Space Travel or King of whatever, probably not so easy for him. But no, there's always a story or a reason for something to happen and to trigger.
So before, it's been ace chatting to you, Will. It was really good. And so before the last question, where can people find you online?
Yeah, so I'm on social. I am William King on Twitter. LinkedIn, if you do that sort of thing, it's getting more and more popular. I do get a lot of LinkedIn requests, I have to say, and 99% I don't link in with unless there's a genuine reason, or a lot of them are very rude actually now. They just say,
really?
link in with me, and you think, who are you?
I did try and add you this morning, so that's a rejection.
Yeah, I don't think so. No. I think there. And then King of Shaves, as a brand, it's at shave.com or kingofshaves.com. And for the Shugs and King of Shades, have a Google of that. You'll find out where that is, kingofshades.co. Haven't got the .com on that. Can't get it, is what it is. But the world's moved on. And then the whole Code Zero area, it's, the sustainability, Code Zero, the King of Shades, all of that is very important. But I'm William King on Twitter will generally get a response out of me. And even if you fancy it, will@shave.com will find me as well.
No, really? You actually answer that.
I do.
Yeah, cool. Right, so last question then. All your friends and loved ones are on this amazing kind of beach. It could be your place down in the West Indies or something. And you've hired this small plane with a little message, or it could be a sort of big message, one of those planes that carries all the messaging behind it. And these could be your final words of wisdom. What would it say on that message behind the plane?
Goodness me. It would probably say that it's on King of Shades packaging, forever and ever, ever, important, ! Enjoy in capital letters.
I like it.
Important, enjoy.
Will King, thank you very much, and much appreciated you coming down. Hooray!
Thank you. Thank you very much for interviewing me. It's been a real pleasure.
Awesome. Thank you.